So, you spend good money on a jacket, and this is the thanks you get? That shiny leather surface peeling away like a terrible sunburn after just a couple of seasons? It is a story many of us are becoming depressingly familiar with. The belt that cracks at the buckle, the shoes whose soles flake apart, the sofa that looks a decade old after only 2 years. We buy it, use it, and then we throw it away. Now consider this. This piece of leather is over 500 years old. It has bound sacred texts, protected warriors in battle, and has survived fires, floods, and the relentless march of centuries. It remains supple, strong, and beautiful. How is that possible? How can something so ancient be so resilient, while our modern, chemically produced materials can be so fragile? How did a medieval artisan, working in what we would consider unimaginable filth, using little more than ash bark and their bare hands, create something so perfect that our modern industry still struggles to replicate its soul? The answer is not a single gotcha. It is a fundamentally different philosophy, a secret built from grit, disgust, and time. And we, in our clean, fast, modern world, have almost completely forgotten it. Before we dive into the filth and genius of the medieval tannery, I want to hear from you. Comment below. Built to last if you believe we have lost something valuable in our rush for convenience. Or tell us about something old you own that has outlasted everything modern. Your stories matter, and they remind us why this knowledge is worth preserving. The Modern Disposable Lie. Take a walk through your own life. When you buy leather today, you are often buying a lie. It is a composite, a bonded material, a chemical concoction designed not to last, but to be replaced. We are living in a world built on the quiet tyranny of planned obsolescence, and it has infected one of our oldest and most noble materials. The culprit in this modern tragedy has a name: chromium tanning. Invented in the mid-19th century, it was a revolution. A tanning process that once took a year could now be done in a single day. With a bath of chromium salts, a rawhide is turned into leather. It was faster, it was cheaper, but in our pursuit of speed and profit, we created a paradox. We built leather that cannot last. Chrome-tanned leather, for all its speed, often lacks the very soul of its ancestor. The chemical process creates a sterile, uniform material, but it leaves the fibers brittle over time. It is prone to cracking, and its production creates a toxic slurry of heavy metals that poisons our waterways. We gained speed, but we lost character. We gained accessibility, but we lost permanence. We gained profit, but we poisoned the planet. And the scale of that poisoning is staggering. Chrome tanning worldwide produces approximately 11 million cubic meters of contaminated water every single year. The chromium waste does not just disappear, it converts into hexavalent chromium, a known carcinogen. In Bangladesh, 25% of chickens, the nation's primary protein source, now contain harmful levels of this toxic metal. The leather scraps themselves behave like plastic in landfills, contributing 75% of the solid waste from leather manufacturing, unable to decompose for centuries. We did not just trade quality for speed. We traded a sustainable craft for systematic environmental destruction. This stands in stark, almost insulting, contrast to what leather was always meant to be. For millennia, it was a heritage material. A good pair of boots was an investment that could be resold for a generation. A warrior's armor was a life-saving heirloom. Leather was not disposable, it was foundational. So it kind of begs the question, how could our ancestors, living in the Dark Ages, so thoroughly outperform us? What did the medieval tanner, a figure often scorned and pushed to the foul-smelling outskirts of town, know that our brightest chemists have overlooked? If you are learning something valuable here, hit that like button and subscribe. These forgotten secrets deserve to be remembered, and your support helps us uncover more of them. To understand, we have to step out of our clean world and into the disgusting, difficult, and miraculous world of the medieval tannery. The world of the medieval tanner. Before we uncover their secrets, we have to understand the artisan. To be a tanner in the Middle Ages was to live in a paradox. You were essential. Your craft produced the materials for shoes, saddles, armor, the very sinews of commerce and war, yet you were an outcast. The stench of the tannery was the stuff of legend, a potent cocktail of animal decay, caustic chemicals, and fermenting dung so powerful that tanneries were, by law, pushed to the edges of towns downstream. The tanner lived and worked in a bubble of his own making, a world of profound and necessary filth. Yet within this world was a jealously guarded body of knowledge. Tanning was a guild craft. You did not just decide to become a tanner, you entered through a grueling apprenticeship that could last 7 years or more. This was genius, passed down through generations. Knowledge was not in a book, it was in the muscles, in the feel of a hide, the smell of a liquor, the subtle signs of a perfect tan, passed from a master who had learned it from his master. But the guild system was more than tradition. It was a quality control mechanism unlike anything we have today. The primary purpose of a medieval guild was not to produce goods, it was to train apprentices, to ensure that knowledge was transmitted perfectly, without degradation, across generations. An apprentice did not advance to journeyman simply by serving his time. He had to prove to his peers that he could be trusted with the guild's trade secrets. If he could not demonstrate mastery, he remained an apprentice. And the consequences for failure were severe. Guild members found guilty of cheating the public, of using inferior materials or cutting corners were not just fined, they were banished from the guild entirely. Their livelihood was destroyed. This was not bureaucracy. This was a system designed to make mediocrity impossible. Every piece of leather that left a medieval tannery carried the weight of this accountability. Modern manufacturing has inspectors and quality metrics. Medieval guilds had something far more powerful: personal honor and community enforcement. Imagine stepping into that world. The ground is a damp mix of dirt, water, and unspeakable things. The air is thick enough to taste. Sunken pits are filled with murky, ominous liquids, and everywhere there is work. The rhythmic wet thud of a fleshing knife, the sloshing of pelts being moved. This was not a factory. It was an outdoor laboratory where raw, decaying flesh was systematically broken down and then miraculously reborn. The men here knew that to create something that could defy time, they first had to embrace the decay, the stench, and the struggle. The first secret: raiding the hide and preparing the canvas. The journey from a dead animal to immortal leather begins not with a delicate touch, but with a brutal chemical assault. But even before this violent transformation, the medieval tanner's genius began with his eyes and his hands. This is the first layer of the secret, knowing what to work with. A master tanner could read a hide like a map. Every scar told a story of a fight or a thorn bush. Every variation in thickness revealed where the animal carried its weight. The modern chrome tanning industry uses any hide scarred, thin, damaged, because the chemical bath will process anything. But medieval oak tanning demanded perfection from the start. The tanner selected only the finest hides, the ones worthy of a year-long transformation. This was not mass production, this was curation. Once the perfect canvas was chosen, the real work began. Before a hide could accept the tan, it had to be stripped bare and purified. This was the deeper secret, the creation of a perfect hungry canvas, and it started in a caustic soup that would burn unprotected skin right off. Hides would arrive stiff with salt, hair, and clinging remnants of flesh. The first real step was a long soak in a milky, aggressive liquid, a solution of lime and water, or lye, from wood ash. This alkaline bath had 3 jobs. First, it loosened the hair, making it easy to scrape away. Second, it saponified the fats embedded in the skin, turning them into a crude soap that could be washed away. But the third effect was the most critical. On a microscopic level, a hide is a dense matrix of collagen fibers. The alkali forced its way in, causing the fibers to swell and push apart. This plumping opened up the entire structure, creating microscopic channels. The tanner was deliberately opening the door, inviting the tan to enter later on. Too little time, and it would not work. Too much, and the lime would eat the hide itself. But here is where the mastery revealed itself. The tanner did not use a timer. He used his hands. After days in the lime bath, he would pull a hide out and press his fingers into it. He felt for the swell, the give, the texture. Too firm meant more time. Too soft meant disaster. A modern chrome tannery uses pH meters and follows a schedule. The medieval tanner calibrated his process with years of tactile memory, reading information that no instrument could measure. This knowledge could not be written down. It could only be learned through touch, repeated thousands of times until the fingers knew what the mind could not articulate. Then came the back-breaking work. The hide was draped over a wooden beam, and the tanner went to work with a blunt curved knife, pushing the hair off in great wet mats. This was not just labour, it was communication. The tanner could feel the hide, detecting thicker patches, thinner areas, scars. It was an artisan's touch. No machine could ever replicate. After dehairing, a sharp fleshing knife was used to shave away the last bits of flesh from the underside, a task of immense skill where one slip could ruin the hide. At the end, you were left with a slick, rubbery, swollen object. It was no longer a pelt, but it was not yet leather. It was a blank, purified canvas, hungry for the next step. The second secret, the disgusting path to purity. The hide that came from the lime bath was clean, but it was chemically trapped, rigid, swollen, and full of alkali. To fix this, medieval artisans turned to one of the most shocking ingredients in their entire arsenal. And the second secret, believe it or not, involves a healthy dose of animal manure. You heard that right. To get from a stiff, alkaline pelt to a soft, receptive skin, the tanner had to dunk it in a warm, soupy vat of water mixed with the excrement of dogs or pigeons. This is called baiting. To us, this seems primitive, even disgusting. But what if I told you that this gross ingredient is part of an ingenious system, a step of profound biochemical genius? Animal dung is rich in enzymes born from the digestive process. When the lime-swollen hides were placed in this warm enzymatic bath, a microscopic army was unleashed. These enzymes neutralized the lime, causing the hide to relax and fall. But they did more. They were selective scavengers, devouring any remaining unwanted proteins and hair roots that the knife and lime had missed. This gently cleaned out the microscopic alleyways, creating a smoother grain and a more flexible final product. The control required was immense. Too little time, and the hide stayed rigid. Too long, and the enzymes would start to eat the leather itself, turning it into a pulpy mess. And once again, the tanner relied not on measurements, but on his senses. He would approach the baiting vat and smell it. The scent of fermentation told him how active the enzymes were. He would pull out a hide and feel it, testing the texture between his fingers. Was it softening evenly? Was the grain becoming smooth? Modern methods use synthetic enzymes and ammonium salts with precise timing. Those are a blunt instrument. The slow organic fermentation of the dung bath was a living soup, a deep biological purification. It is a paradox. The moment of greatest filth was used to create the greatest purity. The tanner was using the power of natural decay to halt decay itself. The third secret, the alchemy of time and trees. With the hide now pure, supple, and receptive, the final and most transformative act could begin, the tan itself. And this is where the medieval philosophy of building something to last becomes crystal clear. This was not a process of days, but of seasons. The third secret was not an action, but a surrender to the unhurried power of nature and time. The tanning agent was the bark of the mighty oak tree, pulverized into a coarse powder. This powder was mixed with water in a series of large pits, creating a gradient of tanning liquors from weakest to strongest. The purified hides would now descend into this world of brown, earthy-smelling water. But they did not go straight into the strongest pit. That would be a disaster called case hardening, where the outside tans so fast it forms an impenetrable barrier, leaving the inside to rot. A beautiful lie. Instead, the journey was a slow pilgrimage. Hides were first laid in the weakest liquor for weeks, gently absorbing the first mild dose of tannins. Then they were moved to the next pit, and the next, for month after agonizing month. Sometimes they were layered flat with fresh powdered bark, sprinkled between each skin, like a grotesque leathery lasagna. In those silent, murky pits, a miracle was happening. Tannin molecules were infiltrating the hide, bonding chemically with the collagen fibers, cross-linking them, and displacing the water. This made the hide inert. It could no longer rot. It became leather. But the genius went deeper still. The medieval tanner was not just controlling the strength of the tannin solution. He was orchestrating a chemical symphony. Different tree barks contained different types of tannins. Birch and hemlock contained catechol, fast-acting tannins that gave colour, producing leather in shades of pink, red or dark brown. Chestnut and oak galls contained pyrogalls, slow-working tannins that improved the leather's resistance to water and wear, producing pale, creamy, yellowish leather. A master tanner knew which combination to use for which purpose. Need leather for a saddle that must endure rain and friction? Use more pyrogallo-rich oak. Need decorative leather for a book binding with rich colour? Balance it with catechol-rich birch. The tanner was not following a recipe. He was composing. This year-long submersion is the absolute antithesis of modern chrome tanning. A chromium salt solution works in hours, but it is a violent shortcut. The slow vegetable tan allowed for a deep total saturation that is impossible to replicate quickly. The very slowness was the genius. It created the dense, complex, integrated fibre structure that gave this leather its legendary durability. The fourth secret, the final transformation through currying. After 12 to 18 months, the hide emerged from its final pit. It was now leather, stable, rot-proof and dense, but it was stiff as a board. The transformation was not yet complete. Now came a process that would determine the leather's final character, currying, also called stuffing. This is the fourth secret, and it is the difference between leather that cracks and leather that endures. The currier was a specialist in his own right. His job was to work fats and oils deep into the newly tanned leather, but this was not random. The type of fat determined the leather's destiny. For harness leather that needed to withstand rain and strain, beef tallow was worked in by hand. Then the leather was placed in rotating drums and dried slowly for over a week. The tallow penetrated deep, creating a waterproof, flexible material. For finer leathers, destined for gloves or book bindings, a more delicate mixture was used. Beeswax combined with lanolin or linseed oil. This gave suppleness without heaviness. Lanolin can be purchased commercially, but if you want to work with truly traditional materials, we have a complete guide on extracting lanolin from wool, the medieval way. The link is in the pinned comment below. For armour, a harder finish was needed, so less oil was used, and the leather was compressed. Medieval curriers did not have written formulas. They had feel. They could tell by touch when the leather had absorbed enough, when it needed more, when it was perfect. The modern equivalent, spraying on a synthetic coating, is fast, but it sits on the surface. Medieval stuffing went to the soul of the leather. After stuffing, the leather was set out, stretched and worked over a blunt blade to remove creases and break down any stiffness. This was called staking. It was exhausting work, but it made the leather truly flexible without compromising its strength. Finally, it was carefully dried. Not in sunlight, which would crack the grain, but slowly in darkness, allowing the fibres to settle into their eternal form. Conclusion: the philosophy of permanence. What had started as a bloody piece of flesh, chosen with care, assaulted with lime, purified with dung, saturated with tannins for a year, and finally awakened with fats, was now a piece of heritage. It was ready to become a boot that would be resold 3 times, a saddle passed from father to son, a book binding that would protect sacred texts for half a millennium. So, what was the secret? After this journey through filth and toil, the answer is clear. It was not a single ingredient. It was a philosophy we have traded for speed and convenience. It was 4 pillars of forgotten wisdom. First was selection and preparation. The medieval tanner knew that greatness begins with the right material and pristine preparation. The brutal, disgusting process of liming and baiting was not crude. It was a sophisticated sequence designed to create a perfect, hungry canvas that modern methods often skip over. Second was the power of biological wisdom. The dung bath was not primitive. It was biochemical genius. Using living enzymes to purify at a microscopic level, something our synthetic shortcuts cannot replicate. Third was the surrender to time. We see a year-long tan as inefficiency. They saw it as a necessary ingredient. They were allowing nature to do the work, and nature is never rushed. The slow infiltration, the chemical orchestration of different tannins, created complexity that speed destroys. And fourth was the final awakening. The stuffing with carefully chosen fats was not an afterthought. It was the moment the leather received its soul, its flexibility, its water resistance, its character. It was the difference between existing and thriving. Look closely at the artifacts that survive. The St. Cuthbert Gospel, bound in leather in 687 AD, still supple after 1,338 years. A pair of boots pulled from a bog, still intact after centuries. The 5,500-year-old shoe found in Armenia's Arani 1 cave, the oldest leather shoe ever discovered, still recognizable. These are not just objects, they are monuments. They are proof that it is possible to create things that last. We live in a world of ghosts, materials that look the part but crumble at the first sign of stress. We have accepted that things are meant to break. The medieval tanner would not have understood this world. For him, the effort was the point. The filth was the price of permanence. The time was the investment in immortality. The selection was the respect for the material. But how did we lose this? How did centuries of accumulated wisdom simply vanish? The answer is not a mystery. It was deliberate. After the Industrial Revolution, throughout the 19th century, medieval guilds were systematically dissolved. Nation-states began issuing patents and copyright protections, which sounds like progress until you realize what it meant. Trade secrets that had been carefully guarded for generations were now revealed and standardized. The knowledge that once lived in the hands of masters was written down, simplified, and made available to anyone. Former craftsmen, the inheritors of centuries of tradition, were forced to seek employment in the emerging manufacturing industries. They no longer used the closely guarded techniques protected by guilds. They used standardized methods, controlled by corporations. The guild system, with all its inefficiencies and exclusivity, had one undeniable feature: it produced excellence. The factory system, with all its efficiency and accessibility, had a different priority: it produced profit. What we call progress was in many ways the destruction of mastery in favor of scalability. We did not choose chrome tanning because it was better. We chose it because it was faster and cheaper. And in that choice, we lost something we are only now beginning to realize we cannot easily get back. Perhaps the real secret was a philosophy we have all but abandoned, that some things are worth the struggle because they are not meant for a season. They are meant for forever. The past is filled with forgotten knowledge and lost arts waiting to be rediscovered. These stories teach us not just about how things were made, but about a different way of thinking about our world. If you believe the past holds secrets worth uncovering and that craftsmanship is a virtue worth celebrating, then subscribe to our channel and join us on this journey. There are so many more secrets to find. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching.